Hello there, wonderful people tuning in to this recording. This is the recording on growth mindset and the grading contract in the labor-based grading course, English 101 at Lower Columbia College. I'm your host of Master Ceremonies, Chris Tower, rocking my geeky attire today. And I got Cubs baseball over here out of sight. You can't see it, but I can. I would open with music, but I'm afraid of copyright infringement. So just imagine that I opened with, like Beautiful Day by U2 or something. Anyway, why I'm going gradeless this year. So let's talk about this a little bit. This course here of English 101 is one in which there are no grades. And there's a reason why there are no grades. And it's because we instructors, and with the we here, I mean this sort of grand we around the world, though I can especially speak for instructors in the United States of America, not just at my school, who see students sort of paralyzed with anxiety that comes from grades. And for example, a student will work pretty hard on a rough draft of an essay and turn it in and get a really bad grade on it because it just doesn't meet expectations or requirements and various criteria for assessment. But then the student might grow from there and do better in a second or third draft, but the overall grade in the course is severely damaged by that initial grade on the rough draft. Or if the instructor has structured the grades well in the course so that grade doesn't have a lot of impact on the final grade, the student is still demoralized if he or she receives, say, a D or even an F, right? Or even for some students, a B is a failing grade in their mind because they're so accustomed to receiving A's. So what if we do away with grades? And we want to do away with grades because we want students in a growth mindset rather than a fixed mindset. What is the difference, and what is a growth mindset compared to a fixed mindset? Well, let's examine this image. A fixed mindset is when you think, I'm not good at this. And you don't allow yourself the opportunity or the permission to get better at the thing. A growth mindset is, what am I missing? I can always improve, So what haven't I considered? What do I need to do to get better? A fixed mindset is, I am awesome at this, which means there's no room for growth, right? Whereas a growth mindset is, I'm on the right track. Because we're never done growing and improving. People that feel that they're done growing and improving are stagnant. They're stuck in place. Other students will say, I give up. It's a cop-out. We're seeing this in our culture right now. I got to mention the pandemic fatigue. This will date this video if I want to reuse it multiple times. But, people are, having mask burnings and things because they're fed up. That's, how would that have worked in London in World War II when people had to keep calm and carry on for years as their city is being bombed? I give up is not an option. It is a cop-out. Instead, growth mindset is, I'll use some of the strategies we've learned to grow and change and succeed. You're not going to succeed all the time. Failure is a great teacher. So instead of, this is too hard, this may take some time and effort. Instead of, I can't make this any better, I can always improve, so I'll keep trying. Instead of, I just can't do math, I'm going to train my brain to do math. You can do math. Everybody can do math. So some people have a head start. That's kind of how I feel about talent, innate talent. I made a mistake, is too fixed. Mistakes help me to learn better. And so we wanted a course that would allow you to make mistakes, that would allow you to fail, and to learn from the failure rather than being penalized for the failure. Okay, so how does this work? First of all, let me just show you what we have in the classroom and what I'm going to review, and then I want to talk about why I'm doing labor-based grading. So first, as I said, what do we have in the classroom? So we have this blog post, which I'll review with you. And it all comes from this module here in modules, which is the main way to always look at the course. The very top one is the grading contract. The second item is the contract. Once you read the contract, you have to click on the first item and confirm the contract, which you should do during the first week of the course. There's additional stuff to read in the third item, how grading works in this class. And then the fourth item is the blog post that I just showed you a second ago. And then there'll be additional items here in the future as we consider how we complete essay processes and what extra assignments we have. But before we review all of that, I want to kind of talk to you about why we're doing labor-based grading and why we have a contract. So imagine that this wasn't an official course for credit at a school, but instead that you had seen my advertisement in the newspaper on the internet and were freely coming to my home studio for a class in, say, cooking or yoga. Let's say, cake baking, right? We would have classes, we'd have workshops or lessons, but there'd be no official grading of omelets or yoga poses or your cake, since letters and numbers would be meaningless in these scenarios. But we want to learn, and perhaps in an engaging, fun, and creative environment. In considering this course in the home studio scenario, we might ask ourselves three questions. First of all, why are grades meaningless in that home studio setup? Second, how do grades affect learning in classrooms? And third, what social dynamics does the presence of grades create? Now, in both these situations, instructors provide students or participants with evaluative feedback from time to time, pointing out where, say, you've done well, or where I, as your instructor, could suggest improvements. In the home studio situation, many of you would help each other, even rely on each other during and outside of our scheduled meetings. In fact, you'd likely get more feedback from your peers on your work and practices than in the conventional classroom, where only the teacher is expected to evaluate and grade. So consider two issues around grades. First, using a conventional classroom grading of essays and other work to complete course grades, conventional classroom grading of essays and other work to compute course grades often leads students to think more about acquiring grades than about their writing or their learning. Let me emphasize that. By doing the traditional grading system, students often think more about acquiring grades. In other words, how do I earn these points? How do I earn those points? I didn't earn enough points. You didn't give me all the points. I want one more point, and it's about points. It's not about writing and learning. They worry more about pleasing their teacher or fooling one than about figuring out what they really want to learn or how they can communicate something to someone for some purpose. In other words, what we do with writing. And by the way, it's really difficult to fool us. It's this weird idea that we weren't students. Number one, that we weren't students doing the same exact stuff. And number two, that we haven't been teaching students forever, and we've seen it all. We've seen it all. Anyway, lots of research in education, writing studies, and psychology over the last 30 years or so has shown that overwhelmingly how the presence of grades in classrooms negatively affects the learning and motivation of students. Alfie Kohn, a well-known educator, researcher, and teacher of teachers, makes this argument succinctly. To put it another way, if learning is what we're here for, then grades just get in the way. So they're wrong goals for us to strive for. An A doesn't build a good bridge for an engineer, nor does it help a reporter write a good story, or an urban planner make good decisions for her city. It's the learning that their grades in school allegedly represent that provides the knowledge to do all they need to do. It's actually true that some students who get low grades, C's or even F's, are actually better performers in the real world than students that get A's. Often what those grades represent is students that are good at getting A's, but they don't necessarily have learned the material and thought about the material. Whereas students that get C's and F's are not as good at earning A's, but they may be absorbing the material, they may be learning, they may be taking risks by trying things and failing, but learning from those failures. In fact, the grade in a course might not represent the overall learning of a student. I first encountered the principles of Jungian psychology, the psychology by Carl J. Jung, in my undergraduate first year courses in religion. I did not get A's in those courses. And yet it put me on a lifelong study of Jungian psychology. I know more about Jungian psychology now, many years removed from those courses, than I did at the time when I was supposed to be doing those readings and supposed to be considering that material. I might not have earned A's in those courses, but I earned A's over my life in the study of Jungian psychology. So, how do we make sure that our goals aren't about grades and instead are about learning to write and about learning being the key word in that sentence? So like I was just talking about, I was not an A student all the time. Sure, I could earn grades when I bent all my will and my discipline to the task and when I had a good relationship with the instructor rather than an adversarial one, which I had sometimes, or one lacking in transparency, as when a guy named Stu Diebeck killed my 4.0 grad school grade point without any pre-warning or set of preordained expectations. Stu and I really got along. We're pretty good friends. But I was totally blindsided by the non-A that he awarded me, which put an end to my 4.0 in graduate school at that particular time. So it's important for teachers to be transparent about the process so that you don't feel blindsided. You should expect the grade that you're receiving at the end of a course. And, there were times when as I said, I could earn A's. When I didn't earn A's, though, in my college courses, I wasn't idle. I ran a college radio station. I created and produced and directed a 3-hour multimedia theatrical show with a cast of 40 people and 2 bands. I wrote novels. I organized art shows in areas of the dormitory that were partly demolished and not yet under construction or reconstruction. I linked arms with hundreds of residents in a stay out of our neighborhood activist event after parties and riots and arrests. I did all kinds of things, which at the time seemed more important than grades in classes, in which I did not feel like I was learning very much. When I cared about what I was learning, then I did the work and I earned A's. And so that's my point. The goal is learning. The goal is not grades. Second, conventional grading may cause you to be reluctant to take risks, especially with your writing or with your ideas. It doesn't allow you to fail at writing, which many suggest is the primary way in which people learn from their practices. Let me pause here. It doesn't allow you to fail, but this is how people learn. The greatest teacher failure is, as Yoda says. So, sometimes grades even lead to the feeling that you're working against the teacher, which is bullshit, I gotta say. I'm not gonna sugarcoat that. The teacher should be on your side. Let's take a moment here. I am on your side. I want you to get A's. I have a fantasy about an opportunity where I can give everybody in the class A's at the end of the quarter. Grades often lead to the feeling that also you cannot make a mistake, like my scenario in which you bomb a rough draft and now your grade is completely ruined for the entire quarter. That's ridiculous. or that you have to hide a part of yourself from your teacher or your peers. You can't be normal. You can't be real. You can't be part of real life. You have to be this robot student machine thing. The bottom line is that failure at writing is vital to learning how to write better. Failure at writing is vital to learning how to write better. And we have to embrace our failures because they show us the places we can improve, places we can learn, we can get better. These are the reasons we're in college: to learn, to get better, to improve. Grades on our work and writing do not allow us to productively fail. They create conditions that mostly punish failure, not reward it for the learning opportunity it can and should be. As you might already notice, what I'm arguing for here is a different kind of classroom and even a different kind of education. Sir Ken Robinson, a well-known education researcher, makes the argument in a TED Talk that typical schooling with grades and particular standards is an old and mostly harmful system that we've inherited, but now it needs to change. One harmful aspect of this old system is that it assumes that everyone is the same, that every student develops at the same pace and in the same ways, that variation in skills and literacies in a classroom is bad. It is clear that the opposite of these things are more true. For all these reasons, I'm incorporating labor-based grading contract to calculate course grades in our class. So as you can see, the philosophy behind labor-based grading is not just mine. It's something that's being embraced all around the world, and particularly in the United States. I got most of my ideas from a guy by the name of Asao Inoue, pictured here. And so I put this together in my blog with a link to his blog, and I had to give him a shout out because he posted a picture of the second edition Dungeon Master's Guide, which totally made me love this guy. He and I would have been pals playing Dungeons and Dragons in 6th grade back in school, except Dungeons and Dragons came out after I was in 6th grade, but I don't want to talk about that. All right, so some of this material that I just shared with you is here in this blog if you want to read it over. In fact, I think all of the material is there. There's a video from a guy back in Michigan, my home state, describing the importance of labor-based grading and how it works. You're certainly welcome to look at that. There's some material here. There's the Sir Kenneth Robinson TED Talk that I just referenced. Some other videos as well on labor-based grading, and my contract, which I updated for this quarter, which right now will date this video for spring of 2021. But if I keep with this configuration, I might continue to use this video. So if you're watching this in the fall of 2021 or after, nothing's changed and it's still, fixed. But we're going to look at the contract. And of course, I'm always going to throw in some funny images. So please take a look at this blog post. As I told you, it's here in the grading contract module. There's also this item that talks about, the concepts a little bit. I'll also let you look that over. Really, I'm not going to read any of these items to you here in this video. But there is the greatest teacher failures. The greatest teacher failures. Yeah, I thought I could get there. All right. I used to be able to do all like Star Wars stuff, like Guta Guta Solo Som Dam Bichule Malaklam Pita Dam Derewa. So it's, I'm a geek. I can't help it. All right. So here's the contract. And so what you're asked to do at the beginning of the quarter is to read the contract and then confirm the contract with this item here. And as a reminder, if you haven't done that yet, please do it right away. And please use an email address that contains your name. And if you don't use an email address that contains your name, please write me and tell me what email address you use so that I can identify you and give you credit, because it is a incomplete task in the classroom to do this. And it's kind of you can't go forward without this task kind of deal, because it's confirming the contract. It's kind of like accepting a job. If you think about our class as if it's a job, this is sort of the interview, where, I'm spelling out the terms of the job. If you don't like these terms, you can drop the class, take somebody else's class. Maybe if you want traditional grading system, go find one of the other teachers that's still using a traditional grading system. I'll warn you that 2 of my colleagues are also using labor-based grading and in a little different methodology. So you might be hard pressed to find the teachers that are still using the traditional grading system, but they're out there, and all you have to do is ask me, and I would tell you. But I'm not going to put it in the video because it may change. So it's a contract between you and I. That's why you accept it. It's kind of like accepting a job, and so then this spells out the rules. This spells out the transparency for how I will function with you in the classroom. This also spells out the expectations that you have to meet to earn the final grade. Because in the end, the school expects a grade. So there are no grades all semester long or quarter. There's no points. You're not earning any of those things. But at the end of the quarter, I have to turn in a final course grade to the college. So the base grade for the course is a B. And so the concept is that if you do all the main things for the B, that you'll get the B, but there are extra things you could do to get a grade that's higher than a B. So I'm not going to read, like I said, read all the parts, but I will focus here on the grid that basically shows what to do. So if you look at the middle column that shows what to do for the B, you'll see that there are 3 essays in the course. You have to earn complete on all 3 essays to earn a B. You have to do that in the end through turning them in after revising them multiple times in a final portfolio. So you see portfolio a little lower in the grid, and there's just one of those. And you automatically get that if you put all 3 of your essays in the portfolio and you meet the other base requirements for the portfolio. It's a little harder to achieve the completes in all 3 of the essays. In fact, this is the hardest thing about the course, is achieving the completes in all 3 of the essays. So I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. There's 10 journal entries. There's 1 journal entry every week. There are 4 times in the quarter that I am going to look at the journal and assess your progress. You'll get a complete if you're more or less complete and you're not behind. You'll get an incomplete if you're too far behind or have no progress in the journal whatsoever. Because that will total 10 entries and 4 of those status checks, which I call a peak, a journal peak, peaking at the journal. Then there's 14 assessed items where the journal is concerned for the quarter. You need to get complete in 12 of those. And really what that number represents is that you do all 10 journal entries appropriately and earn a complete in all 10. And you get complete on 2 of the peaks. To get higher than a B, you'd have to try to get all 4 peaks complete, and or do extra journal entries. There are 12 assignments that are specific assignments called assignments. They're in an assignments module. We can go back and look at that because it's right near the top under required assignments. And if you look here, there's 12. You don't need to do all 12 to earn the B. You only have to do 11 or 10 to earn the B, or earn complete on 11 or 10. Because earning incomplete is the same as missing the assignment. The only difference is that if you don't do the assignment, you might not be able to do it later and earn that complete. Whereas if you do the assignment and you miss a key requirement and earn incomplete, you can fix that and you can convert that to complete. So it's always better to attempt assignments and then revise if necessary than to skip them entirely But you can skip 2. And if you're reading the contract language, you scroll up here, you'll see you have this thing called a gimme. And the gimme allows you to convert one skipped assignment or journal entry to complete. Conferences are really important in this class because communication is vital in this class. So there's going to be 4 conferences. You have to attend all 4 conferences and meet any required conditions in those conferences. Sometimes there's things that you have to do. And so, that there's no, you'll notice that it's 4 for an A, it's 4 for a B, it's 4 for a C. If you miss a conference, you're all of a sudden earning a D. And then the attendance is assessed by the number of weeks. There's a total of 10 weeks. That's 2 class periods per week. And so you have to have 9 total weeks to earn the B. And that's the grid. Now, some students have asked, that say you meet the B requirements in everything except one category. Let's say that you have terrible attendance, right? So you have 7 or fewer in attendance, which is giving you a D or below, but you meet the B in all the other ways. So you do all the things, right? Does that mean that you're getting a D or below? This is the one thing not addressed in the contract, because the way the contract language works is that, yes, you'd be getting a D or below just for that reason. Is that something I'm actually going to do? Well, we're supposed to meet you where you are. So this is about a working relationship, So I would say that in some cases, yeah, a student would get a D or below just for that reason. In other cases, maybe not. Maybe there'd be extenuating circumstances. And this is something I would negotiate back and forth. And so that's why this final small print, detail thing above is the case, the situations under which I terminate contracts. I terminate contracts if I have to, when there's no chance for a student to pass. And I give plenty of warning. And it says that right in here. It says that I'll warn you that this is coming. I don't want to penalize students for struggling. It's supposed to be okay to struggle in this class. But also, it's just like a job. If I've hired you, here at the McDonald's of school, and you're not doing your job, then ultimately you get fired. And actually, you'd get fired a lot faster at McDonald's for not doing your job than you would get fired in this class for not doing your job. You have lots more leeway. But ultimately, there comes a time in which it's just not fair to the other students that are keeping up and holding up their part of the bargain to continue to give extra chances to the people that aren't. If you struggle and you work to overcome your struggles and you make progress toward the goals, then that's different. But if you continue to make no effort toward the goals, then what's the difference between struggling and just not doing anything, right? And this is something we'll talk about elsewhere in the course, whether we're still writing an essay about it or not, in a concept about laziness does not exist. So I'm careful to talk about this because I may stop using it as part of an essay, but I'll still bring it into the classroom and make it part of our conversation. So what I recommend you do, because I don't want to read it all to you, is go through this this contract. Understand the late and incomplete work situation. Understand what happens when you miss work entirely. There's a 48-hour grace period for most things, not everything. What happens when you have incomplete status? There's a difference between missing something and having incomplete, and doing it and missing a requirement to have incomplete. Now, some teachers that teach labor-based grading, if you turn the thing in, you get a complete. There's really no assessment of the thing. You turn in the thing, you got to complete. I don't think that that is a good way to work. Because, for instance, let's say I've asked you to write a summary of a paragraph in length on an article you've read. So I have student A here gives me a sentence as their paragraph. I have another student here that gives me a paragraph that's like 350 words long. Are these efforts equal? Well, I really don't know, right? Because the student A that wrote the sentence may have labored over that sentence for hours. I don't know. What I see is a single sentence, which takes much less time to write than a 350-word paragraph. But the student that wrote the 350-word paragraph might have dashed it off in 45 minutes compared to the 5 hours under which the student struggled to write just that sentence. But I would have to say that the student that wrote the sentence has an incomplete because I asked for a paragraph. If I ask for a paragraph and you give me a sentence is not a paragraph. Now, what if the student gave me 2 sentences? That's not just a single sentence. Is that closer to a paragraph? You know, it depends on how we define these things, right? You know, if I ask you, if we're working in that home studio and ask you to make a cake and you give me something that's sort of like a cake, but it's not the greatest, you know, representation of a cake, then we really have to interpret this a little bit more. But the student that gives me a sentence or 2 sentences should have an opportunity to work on that a little bit more and try to get closer to the student that gave me the 350-word paragraph, right? Students shouldn't just strike out on one chance, right? But if the student doesn't do it at all, maybe then it's not done. You know, if you're supposed to be there making burgers and I go to grab a burger and there are no burgers because you're on your phone and you're not making burgers, then there are no burgers to give to the people that are waiting at the drive-thru. And then what the heck are we? I have to go make the burgers? Who's making the burgers? What's going on here? So there are chances because we're dedicated to growth mindset and we want to meet you where you're at. You know, but like I just explained a few minutes ago, if a student continues to really not do anything, that's very different than a student that continues to try and is growing, but maybe at a slower rate than some of the other students in the class, because everybody is at a different level, and that's okay. That's okay. So I try to outline in here what we'll do when you earn incomplete, because in some cases you can fix the situation, and in some cases you might not be able to. And so I'll always try to be transparent within each assignment, what the conditions are to earn complete, because there's got to be some basic requirements. You know, if I ask you to make a cake and you give me a loaf of bread, it's not really a cake. Or maybe a better example is if I ask for a cake and you give me some sliced up carrots, you know, very much not a cake, right? So we got to have some basic requirements for things. And with the essays, there's more basic requirements than with some of the other assignments. Some of the other assignments are much easier to earn complete. There's maybe only 1 or 2 little things that are just very sensible. Whereas, and sometimes it's just an appropriate amount of apparent effort, you know, like a length, right? So that student that's writing a sentence or 2 sentences for the summary just writes a little bit more and then meets the basic requirement for that summary, right? As long as the sentences actually are summarizing the article, which is the other thing, right? So look through here, you know, conferences are important, you know, but that's why all this issue I'm talking about is based on this thing here. Follow all of the labor instructions. So really, when it comes down to awarding complete or incomplete on a thing you actually produce and turn in, it has to do with whether or not you have followed the labor instructions. So often the incomplete is because you have missed a labor instruction. So talked about the gimme, talked about how we assess it at the end. And this is something I think I want students to be thinking about from the beginning, because in the end, we're holding you to the course outcomes and how well you meet those course outcomes. And so this is something we'll talk about all quarter long, but we set it up here from the beginning. So you examine all of this. I want you to have a good understanding. There's these asterisks that break out these different things about the things in the grid that you should also read. Then there's some content on how to raise your grade. Plus, there is a rule for how I will make changes if I have to. I haven't so far had to during the quarter. So then there's a bunch of things in here about raising your grade from that B. And then if you agree with everything, you make the agreement happen by clicking in this confirmation. Again, remember that's the very first item, and it opens up to this, and then you confirm the contract. So that's the contract. That's growth mindset. I hope you like this method. I think it'll be fun. Other students have liked it. We're going to have a great time here together. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for being part of this class. Consult the page on which you found this video for what to do to earn complete on this, because this is one of your attendance requirements in the attendance section of the contract. These recorded class lessons that come out every Thursday are subject to doing what's in the instructions for earning complete on this part and earning that attendance element in the contract. So thanks for paying attention, and we'll see you around the classroom. I would so play music if we were in the live classroom right now. See you later.